Nation in Conversation, taking you on a journey through the South African countryside. Proudly sponsored by Monsanto, Nedbank and Senves, in association with AFGRI, Hinterland and NWK.
Hello and welcome to Nation in Conversation on our journey through the beautiful South African countryside. Today we visit a well-known town in the Limpopo province, Tzaneen, and investigate the diverse sights and sounds that make this such a special destination. This of course includes a variety of agricultural activities, but in the end we stop at the poultry industry. This is what you can look forward to in today's program. In Homegrown, we take the R71 to admire the incredible scenery en route to Tzaneen. The road then leads us to Lufafa Hatchery in Letsitele. Chris Burgess joins us in Context, and we talk to Country Bird Holdings to see just how the chicken finds its way to the shelves. Theo then closes the program in Dialogue with an in-depth discussion with Kevin Lovell from the SA Poultry Association.
The word Tzaneen comes from the word Tzaneen, which means come together. Nestled among fertile gorges and hills of the Volkberg mountain, Tzaneen is the second largest town in the Limpopo province. The town sits in the middle of a subtropical paradise. Here, visitors can take a leisurely drive among the many farms, plantations and natural forests that flank the scenic routes like that of George's Valley Road. The more famous Magubas Kloof mountain pass on the R71 road is even more spectacular. This pass climbs 446 vertical meters to summit at 1,400 meters above sea level. On this route, you have the chance to pull over at the Debegeni waterfalls and the lookout point over the Ebenezer Dam. Farm stalls, quaint restaurants and tea gardens along the way are popular among locals and tourists. Many hiking trails and even some trout fishing can be found in this picturesque area. Before you finally turn off to town, you cross the impressive bridge over a part of the Tzaneen Dam. Plenty of rain and warm summer days create the perfect climate for producing tropical and subtropical crops. Farming in the area takes place over some 20,000 square kilometers. The valley below Tzaneen yields citrus like Valencia oranges and grapefruit such as Star Ruby, with this region producing the majority of the country's bananas, mangoes, avocado pears, pawpaws, tea and coffee. It is also one of the most important timber production areas in South Africa. The surrounding mountain slopes are heavily forested with pine and eucalyptus tree plantations, and close on 40 sawmills operate in the area. The small town of Letsitele is some 26 kilometers from Tzaneen and home to Lufafa Hatchery, where we are dropping in today. The hatchery is an important employer in Letsitele. It's also a valuable contributor to the food value chain in the region. Let's take a closer look at how chicks rule the roost at Lufafa.
Lufafa Hatchery has been about 25 years on the go. We've been producing day-old chicks since then. We're currently at about 250,000 day-old chicks per week, which basically come from the farm. We've got about 100,000 breeder hens on the farm which lay up to 45,000 eggs per day, which then get collected 5 times a day. The eggs get brought to the hatchery where we then incubate the eggs into setters or incubators. The eggs are approximately 21 days or 504 hours in the incubators, and after 21 days we have a little day-old chick which we then distribute to clients in and around the area as far as Thohoyandou, Palabora and as Mokopane as well. Here at Lufafa Hatchery we employ approximately 140 permanent workers. Most of the workers stay on the farm, however there are quite a few of them that choose to still go home and to their relevant communities every day.
I've been working at Lufafa Hatchery for 23 years, from 1992 up till today. So Lufafa Hatchery has done a lot in my life, in my family. Lufafa Hatchery that put my kids at school. As a supervisor, I'm supervising people, I'm looking people, I'm checking if everything is okay. Every morning till end of the day, I'm checking because we are working with the live chicks, and the cold room, we have to manage it and check the degrees are fine because they have to be 18 degrees. Remember, if it's less than 18 degrees or 16 degrees, the embryos will die. So we have to be sharp every day and check our temperatures is up to standard so that we stay on 18 degrees.
We also have initiatives whereby we employ students from China University of Technology, 2 to 3 students a year, where they then come here and they learn all our processes, they help us and work on the farm, in the chicken houses as well as in the hatchery. And at the end of the year, they are then fully qualified as animal production students. And we also try and keep the local community as much involved with our processes and with our production as we can, so that they also know what Lufafa Hatchery is all about.
Did you know the South African poultry industry provides work to some 130,000 people?
Just like any other agricultural industry, the poultry industry is of paramount importance and needs our support as consumers. After the break, Chris Burgess from Landbouweekblad joins us, and Country Bird Holdings sheds some light on the process from farm gate to kitchen table. Welcome back to Nation in Conversation. Today, investigating the poultry industry. It affects all of us, so please join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. With me is Chris Burgess from Landbouweekblad. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
The poultry industry seems to be in crisis.
Yeah, no, it does. I think the big bone of contention is import. So we import meat from the EU, from the USA, and from South America, and the big problem there is that the first world countries only eat the breast, and the rest of the bird gets seen as a waste product. So often, despite tariffs, often the meat comes into South Africa at cheaper than what we can produce it. So our producers simply, in that respect, aren't competitive.
Well, that is quite disturbing, especially seeing as poultry is such a huge part of the domestic market.
Yes, it is. It's actually our biggest meat market in South Africa, and by value, the biggest agricultural industry. So yes, it is very disturbing. You know, the thing is that the poultry market, well, the poultry production is, it's a low cost form of protein. So the state does sit with a problem. I mean, you want to get cheap food into South Africa for our poorer consumers. On the other hand, you want to protect an industry that provides jobs and that has a huge impact on the secondary industries such as maize. So it's quite complex, and it's going to need the wisdom of Solomon to really sort this problem out.
Yeah. We will get back to Chris shortly, but first, here's a look at the operations at Country Bird Holdings that stretch across all major concerns within the sector.
South African poultry industry, we produce about 19 million broiler chickens per week. That makes us the biggest in the sector of agric, bigger than red meat or grains. Not a lot of people know that. To highlight that, we've got about 160 million chickens and more on the ground in South Africa on any given day. The supply chain spans across feed, breed, agric, processing, distribution and sales. The industry is set up according to an American model. It's very scientific, everything gets measured. The broiler that one eats or consumes is the fourth generation in that chain. What happens is one starts with great-grandparents, then you grow them to sexual maturity at about 20 to 22 weeks. The hens will then lay eggs up to 60 weeks. And then the next stage continues. So it's great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and then you get to the broiler. So you start initially with a pure line. So you have a pure male line, a pure female line. The male line produces a lot of protein. Female line produces a lot of egg. And then you crossbreed with those to get the right combination right through to the broiler. So a lot of multiplication, and you reduce cost as you continue down that chain. To illustrate that, if you start on the grandparent side, and you would start with a kilogram of fluffy chicks, and you would follow that chain through, it takes you about 2 years to get to delivering broilers. But that 1 kilogram produces over another 2 years and produces about 10 tons of meat. So that's the multiplication. That obviously reduces the cost. We can't eat the pure lines because it would simply be too expensive. We in particularly measure things like feed conversion rate. As an example, the broiler can gain weight of about 1 kilogram for every 1.6, 1.7 kilogram of feed that it consumes. Every hen would lay about 165 eggs between that 22 weeks and 60-week age. I think a very important thing for us is to mention that we as South African industry are not only cost efficient, but we're also very efficient in terms of all those key performance indicators that we measure.
Did you know the biggest input cost in raising chickens for slaughter lies in the feed bill, which amounts to 70% of the rearing cost?
It's always revealing to see how complex the processes are to bring the goods to us as consumers. Perhaps this will give us a better understanding of the sector. Chris, hasn't there been a huge backlash against factory farming?
Well, there has, but I mean that has been sort of in the higher LSMs. So the issue is, I mean, the poultry production is actually quite cost effective. So if you're going to be producing mainly with free-range systems, and I know there will be people that disagree with me on this, your meat's going to be more expensive. So you know, if you are prepared to pay, I don't know, twice, 3 times what you pay for broiler at the moment, I mean, then we could go to free-range systems, and I don't think that you'll be able to produce the volumes, you know. So consumer demand does play a role in shaping farming systems.
And what about the whole brining debacle? Why would you inject water into a chicken?
Well, I think you need to ask Kevin Lovell that, but as I understand it, I mean, it provides the chicken with a better taste. But I mean, there is anecdotal evidence that your lower LSM consumer, who are actually very judicious in their use of money because they don't have much disposable income, so they have to be very careful how they spend their money. And I mean, they have picked up that the chicken boils away. So I think there has been a bit of a pushback from your lower LSM consumer, but I mean the brining levels have been dropped now. That of course has a cost impact on the producer, but I think that has more or less been sorted out now.
Thank you, Chris. After the break, Theo talks to Kevin Lovell from the SA Poultry Association to further our insights into the poultry industry.
Welcome back to Nation in Conversation. With me today is Kevin Lovell from the South African Poultry Association to further discuss the issues identified earlier in the program. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
Kevin, if one looks at the poultry industry, it seems that we are in quite a predicament. What is the background to this?
Well, like most things in life, it often starts with a problem, and then a problem either goes away or becomes a crisis. So we've unfortunately moved from problem to crisis, meaning collapse is the next step.
Now, what's the reason behind this?
Dumping. Simple as that. If you want a practical example, is that agriculture is used to dealing with disaster, droughts, floods, whatever. And what does agriculture do? The price of commodities goes up. So Rainbow, or RCL Foods as they're now known, has a maize milling division. The price of their maize meal went up because of the price of the maize that goes into it went up. The price of their chicken or nobody else's chicken that's produced locally could go up because EU imports come in at way below EU costs, let alone South African production costs.
But there's a specific reason for that dumping, and that has to do with who consumes what.
Basically, it's all about diet. So the so-called global poultry export market is actually really three countries, if you treat the EU as a country. Brazil number 1, the US number 2, and the EU number 3. The US is not an exporter, it's a waste disposer. The EU is not an exporter, even more so than the US, it's a waste disposer. The EU imports breast meat because that's what they want to eat, it's a fashion meat, and they have this mountain of dark meat. Brazil becomes a dumper because they supply the breast meat to Europe, so now what do they do with the leftovers, the leg quarters? Well, find somebody poor somewhere else in the world and get rid of your problem with the poor. That's what it's all about, getting rid of your problem with the poor.
So we end up with all those...
With the junk.
With the junk.
Edible junk, admittedly, yep. But junk.
In terms of, specifically, if you look at it from a European or an American point of view.
Well, they won't eat it. I mean, so what do you do? People sometimes say they're legless after a long weekend, but generally chickens all got legs, and what do you do with them?
Our industry as such, is it a competitive industry if it wasn't for the dumping?
Well, it's a very interesting question, because most of the harm we're suffering now is from imports from Europe of leg quarters or bone-in portions. More than 80% come from the European Union. The University of Wageningen, one of the premier agricultural universities in the world, has done a survey, well, they do it regularly, of the costs of whole birds around the world. We can produce a whole bird for 20 and 40% less than any of the EU countries they survey. So logic tells you that there should be zero imports from Europe because they are uncompetitive compared to us. Maybe it's more expensive to produce chicken in Antarctica, but the EU is one of the highest cost producers in the world. They come here because they dump. The products come here because they dump. Does that argument hold with other countries? No. So we are equivalent in price to Thailand, roughly, slightly more than the US and quite a bit more than Brazil and Argentina. Why are we more than Brazil and Argentina? Because we pay more for maize and soybeans. So it's not about the general competitiveness. You have to look at it in specifics. And then there's another measure. Are we good farmers? In other words, can we take animal food or animal feed and turn it into human food? And depending on whose assessment you use, we're in the top 10, sometimes number 2, sometimes number 5 in the world, as efficient farmers converting feed into food. If we pay more for maize, less for maize and soya, hopefully not anymore because the rains are coming, but if we pay less for maize and soya and make us on a cost competitive basis, you cannot get rid of dumping because it would just make us as cost competitive as the Americans or the Brazilians or the Argentinians. And if they dump, well, you're still out of place.
Another issue that we talked about a lot is the whole issue of brining. What is the potential effect of brining, first of all, on the consumer and on the chicken industry?
Well, some of the effect on the consumer has already been seen. These regulations came into effect on the 22nd of October, and companies were allowed to sell their old stock. So all the suffering that you're seeing in the industry is actually predates the new brining regulations. The full effect, it's too soon to tell. Traditionally, December is a good month, January is a bad month, so I think we should wait like 6 months before we get a good idea of how badly or whatever the effect is. But what you have seen is people still want to buy 2 kilogram packs, and the new regulations increase the cost of production of those packs by 19%. Nothing else changed. And it distorts the data that Stats SA produces because they report a pack size. They're not reporting the amount of chicken in a pack. So the price of the pack's gone up, but in reality, the price of the chicken hasn't gone up.
We now talked about the challenges of the industry. And clearly, if we have a major problem in the industry, we might lose that industry, which is jobs, the people in the value chain. What's currently being done to try to save an industry that we need?
Well, actually, quite a lot's now being talked about, and hopefully some of it at least will be done. And why is it only being talked about now? Is I think all around the world, governments have got too many things on their plate. So when they've got a crisis, they deal with it. When they have a problem, they hope it goes away. They've acknowledged we're in crisis. So there's a government-led task team with various government departments and agencies, industry and labour, all together saying, what can we do? What should we do? So the first thing we should do is more than what the industry's been doing up to now, which is relying on trade measures. Because the problem with trade measures, either the exporters or the importers can just jump around whatever comes in place. They're flexible. It's a waste product, so the price just as the tariffs go up, the price goes down. It doesn't work. The real effect of tariffs, so all the tariff work we've done is in between 3.5% and 5.7% over the last couple of years. That's kind of not much protection. So what we're going to do, if I may call it, is a range of Minister Gagaba moments. You want us to have visas? Well, then you can have to apply for a visa. We will treat our trading partners in the same way they treat us. Now, we've never done that. We've always given them the free pass, the one to the backstage. And now I'm afraid we're taking that away, unless they pay extra, of course, because for the backstage you can pay more.
Will that save an industry?
Yes, if the measures are consistently applied and they're broad enough, and it must be multiple measures. We're not talking about a measure. We can't make this industry, make it too easy for prices to move unnecessarily upwards. What's the safety net that consumers have is the retail chains. None of them love each other, and they're all going to keep cutting prices to get market share. And this is the single biggest part of food retail in South Africa. There's no other commodity which takes up as much space in food retail. So for some of this chain serving the lower end of the markets, as much as 14% of their food turnover is chicken. They're going to keep biting at us. That's your safety valve.
Thank you, Kevin. That was Kevin Lovell from the SA Poultry Association. Till next week.
Thank you, Theo. Next week, our journey takes us to the Northwest Province with a variety of tourist attractions. In the area, we visit a local vegetable producer for insights into this industry that contributes significantly to the South African economy. Until then, remember to exercise your right as a consumer. Join the conversation. It affects us all. Goodbye.
Nation in Conversation, taking you on a journey through the South African countryside. Proudly sponsored by Monsanto, Nedbank and Senves, in association with AFGRI, Hinterland and NWK.